Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. My name is Kaitlyn Mitchell. I'm a staff lawyer with Animal Justice. Animal Justice is Canada's leading national animal law organization, but I do live here in Winnipeg. I greatly appreciate the work that Animal Services has put into the Responsible Pet Ownership Bylaw review. As you've heard today already, the current bylaw is quite outdated in a number of ways. It doesn't adequately address a number of really important issues that have serious implications not only for animals in Winnipeg, but also for public health and safety, as well as our local environment and ecosystems. So I do applaud Animal Services as well as City Council for their attention to these issues and for continuing to work to make Winnipeg a better and safer place for both animals and humans. Now, that said, I am incredibly concerned that a majority of the Standing Committee voted to put a halt to the ongoing work by Animal Services to draft recommendations to improve the regulation of exotic animal ownership in the city. And I'd like to speak to you about that today. I will also briefly talk about the other two matters with respect to the RPO bylaw review. That is the proposal to adopt new breed-neutral tools to promote responsible dog guardianship, and why Animal Justice and a number of animal protection groups, animal shelters, and farmed animal sanctuaries across Manitoba and across Canada have spoken out to oppose the proposed urban chicken keeping project in the city. And I'd just like to point out that I have provided a lot more detail on all three of these issues in the written submissions that I sent to the committee. I won't obviously be able to get through all of that today in my presentation to you. And there's also a joint submission from Animal Justice and a number of animal protection groups across Canada. And I should note that Humane Canada, which is Canada's federation of SPCAs and humane societies, also supports those comments. Unfortunately, they didn't get their signature on until after we'd already had to submit those comments yesterday. But I do highly urge you to look at those. So briefly on the issue of breed-specific legislation. You've already heard from presenters on this topic, and I believe you're going to hear from more today, so I'll keep my own comments brief. What I'd like to say about breed-specific legislation is that it does not work. Time and time again, studies have shown that it does not improve community safety. A study of 36 community municipalities showed that breed-specific legislation, pit bull bans, do not reduce the number of dog bites or the severity of dog bites. In Toronto, the number of dog bites went up after 10 years of their pit bull ban. And in Winnipeg, from what I can tell, our hospitalizations for dog bites have remained approximately the same since our pit bull ban came into force. So this ban is outdated, it's ineffective, it's unscientific, it focuses on regulating the wrong end of the leash. So if we're really going to talk about protecting public safety, what we need to do is move to a breed-neutral, community-based approach to responsible pet guardianship. And again, you've already heard about that today. We can follow the lead of cities like Calgary, where they've adopted such an approach and they've seen a 5-fold drop in the number of dog bites that they've seen. So I really am thankful to see that Animal Services is proposing many new tools that would move us in that direction. Things like creating the new category of at-risk dogs and some new tools to prevent individuals who are irresponsible dog owners and guardians from acquiring new animals in the future. Now, moving on to the issue of backyard chickens. What I'd like to make clear is that although a 2-year pilot project may seem like a fairly innocuous task, it may seem like a pretty harmless thing to approve, I really urge you to fully assess both the risks and the benefits of that project before allowing it to proceed. It's important that you ensure that all risks to animal welfare as well as to public health are considered before approving the project, since it will be difficult at the end of the project or in the event that we see an avian flu outbreak linked to a backyard flock in the city. It will be difficult to step in at that time and shut things down, rehome birds, and really fix the problem after we've already allowed it to develop. So briefly, Brittany this morning was able to speak to this, but I really want to emphasize that we are seeing the emergence of a highly infectious and deadly avian flu virus throughout Canada. It is very much here in Manitoba. It's been in the news, so I hope that you're all aware of that. Canadian infectious disease specialist, Dr. Jan Hayek, has sent you written comments explaining his position as an infectious disease specialist about why this project is a bad idea. And as he's outlined, it is known that backyard chicken flocks present an important interface where pathogens, including influenza, can travel between backyard chickens and wild birds, and vice versa. This is a known fact. Dr. Hayek has also explained that it is rare for H5N1, that's the current strain that we're seeing, to infect humans at this time. But of course, we've all learned over the last 2 years that the more we allow a virus to mutate, the greater the chances that it's going to become a zoonotic disease and it could become more infectious to humans. We just don't know. Avian influenza is already having a disastrous impact on wildlife rehabilitation centers here in the province, and none of them were consulted on this. I've already reached out to them. They were not consulted about the impact of introducing new backyard flocks in the city and the disease risks and what that could mean for wildlife and for their own operations. There's no discussion in the report by Animal Services about the disease risks or how they'll be mitigated, but no doubt, I've absolutely no doubt that the agency is now aware of those risks. I have no doubt that they're concerned about them. Please do ask them today if there's a way to mitigate those risks within the confines of what they're proposing for urban hens. And with due respect to the members of the Standing Committee, I don't believe that the majority that voted to approve the project provided an adequate rationale for dismissing the disease risk concerns. They're very serious. The project also poses really serious risks to animal welfare. I won't be able to get into all of them today. I know that you're going to hear from Colleen Walker from the Little Red Barn later on today, so hopefully she can give you some of that context. What we're talking about is keeping chickens in people's backyards outdoors year-round. We have frigid Manitoba winters that, as you're all learning now, can go on for months and months and months on ends. So this is a really serious issue. Yet the recommendations have no specificity in terms of temperature control, coop size, design standards. We simply don't know how the welfare of these animals is going to be protected. What we do know is that increasing the number of backyard hens in the city is going to result in hens as well as roosters who will be inadvertently purchased, because we've seen this in all the other jurisdictions that this has happened. It will result in hens and roosters being abandoned, surrendered to already overburdened shelters and sanctuaries, and as well as sent off to slaughter. The Montreal SPCA has written to you as well. They've given you the data from that jurisdiction. Please look at that. Please know that this will happen here as well if we move in this direction. So about the urban chickens proposal, what I would conclude by saying is that I really urge you to weigh the risks against the benefits of the project. And what I would say to you is that the benefits are minimal. This is not going to improve food security. To be clear, the average cost of setting up a coop in Toronto is more than $1,000. You need a large backyard that's fenced in, you need money to feed the chickens, you need money for veterinary care. Low-income Winnipeg families are not going to be able to participate, unfortunately. So this program is not going to have a benefit when it comes to food security in Winnipeg. It will, however, pose risks. It will take resources away from animal services, who will have to respond to noise, odor, nuisance, wildlife complaints. So I haven't even talked about predators, as well as mice and rats. It's going to take up resources, and I say to you that the risks simply are too high and the benefits are too low. Now, moving on to exotic animal ownership in the city. Back in May of last year, the Standing Committee directed the Public Service to report back with recommended reforms to the responsible pet ownership bylaw. One of the areas that they were to give recommendations on was exotic pet ownership in the city. This Animal Services came out in August with their proposed ideas. They identified a number of issues in there having to do with exotic animals. They emphasize that they're taken from the wild sometimes, or else they're born in captivity. Stray exotic animals require law enforcement resources. They drain the Humane Society's resources, as you heard this morning. So although Animal Service was granted an extension on reporting back on the recommendations in December, and they were to do so by April, they've now asked for a one-year extension. I was quite surprised when the majority of the committee below voted to reject Animal Services' recommendation for a one-year extension, essentially putting an abrupt and premature halt to the review of the RPO bylaw as it pertains to exotic animals. And it's really hard to overstate how important this issue is. Hundreds of thousands of exotic animals are kept in Manitoba, but many wild animals sold in the exotic pet trade cannot have their needs met in captivity. So I'll end there. I believe I'm out of time. So what I would urge you to do is just to please allow that review to unfold. There is no reason to stop it now. Please allow Animal Services to report back with recommendations, and you can then make an informed decision about whether or not the bylaw should be amended and what that should look like. Thank you.